Hey folks, Coach Patrick here from Endurance Nation. I want to welcome you to another Friday afternoon broadcast from me every Friday, 12 p.m. East Coast time. I am here live in our Facebook channel to connect with you. Most weeks I go ahead and present on a topic. You can view those by going to our events or past posts and learn more about them. Or if you're following our podcast channel as well, endurancenation.us/podcasts. With an S at the end, you'll see some of the content there and be able to capture some of that audio as well. But at the end of every month, I like to take a little bit of a break and do a little, question and answer session, just a chance to kind of see where folks are at, and then also get some feedback from you. So those of you who are joining me today, you can go ahead and just post a comment right here in the live broadcast area, right there on the Facebook page. Or question or feedback or comment, and I'll be happy to talk to you about it. I do have one topic I wanted to talk about early on as we get started, but as I said, when you're ready, just put your questions, comments, whatever it is, in the side there. So one comment or thought that I had today, which is really interesting, was I heard an analogy on the news this week talking about kind of where we are right now in terms of coronavirus, getting vaccinated, but also dealing with potentially new strains or definitely new strains happening. What does that mean for the next couple of months, right? We can kind of see the end, but we're not quite there yet. And it really brought it home for me. They said it was a horror movie. I didn't think of it as a horror movie. I thought of it as a race, right? Like an Ironman or a marathon or an epic ride. You know how close you are to the finish, but you also know that you are really nowhere near the finish, right? And to me, that gray area is one of the most intriguing parts of endurance sports, and one of the places that I enjoy sort of grappling with the most and helping athletes work their way through that process. And so it's understanding that sort of the general, population of people, many of whom are not endurance athletes, may struggle with sort of what that concept means. And maybe the horror movie analogy seems better. Because it's more of a social one, right? Like everyone in the theater can see what's happening on the screen, and we're like, don't open the door, don't do it, right? But I think the relevant example is much better with thinking about an endurance event, which is sort of your own decisions, things that you're in control of, and sort of what your resolve is to achieve your goal, and defining what that gap is, right, between where you are now, how far you've come, understanding you still have further to go, and then how far you have left to go, right? So not thinking about it as the whole event, but saying this is how much I have left, and then breaking that event down, in the remaining parts of that event down, into sort of manageable so you can go through it, right? And I think that's really, really helpful to understand. And I think that's what a lot of people are trying to do right now. At least that's what I'm trying to do with my kids, as I talk to them about how we navigate the winter, how we navigate spring, and hopefully summer. So I certainly have, an emotional tie to whatever the end version of the pandemic would be. But I've also got a very realistic view honed through years of being an athlete and a coach that lets me know that there's plenty of work to be done between now and the finish, and we're not at the finish until literally I have crossed the line. And right now I just know from my watch that, I'm getting close, but that's all. I don't hear an announcer yet. I don't see a finish line. I'm not getting that emotional piece just yet. This is where I'm kind of putting my head down and getting to work. So I thought that was sort of a really pertinent example, and one where I thought like we could do a great deal more as athletes, sort of helping other people frame the challenges that they have out there and how they deal with it, right? Okay, awesome. Hey, I see we've got a bunch more viewers. If you do have questions or comments about training, about endurance sports, about current events, whatever it is, go ahead and just put it in the comment box right there on Facebook. I promise I will not pop out of your computer, but I will give you an answer. This is test week, just so you guys do know, inside the house here, for folks who are doing our out-season program, our January out-season program, test week coming up. And people are sort of wrestling with what does it mean to test? What does it mean to sort of grapple with the concept of defining where you really are versus where you think you are? And I think that's one of the core tenets that I see with our athletes who kind of separate themselves from the pack, right? So there's people who just want to do events but don't want to train. Inside Endurance Nation, we have people who want to train and get better to do their events. And then there's the sort of the cadre of athletes who say, like, I want to get better, I want to train, I'll do it. But I also understand that really diving into who I am as an athlete is important, and I'm going to do that hard work as well. And sometimes that means coming to terms with your injuries. It means coming to terms with the sort of the pathology of your training and how things work. It could mean coming to terms with work or other constraints that you have, or physical constraints, whatever they may be. That's fine. But in the case of testing, what it really means is, are you willing to do the work to define where you are? And the resistance to the testing functionality really kind of ends up being a place where people are worried about two things. One, the work associated with the test, right? That's a function of the resistance. And the other function of the resistance is also getting the answer, right? And I think I think it's a large part. That's the bottom half of the iceberg that you can't see, which is if I do this test coach, then I'm going to know exactly where I am, right? There's no more hiding. There's no more fudging, right? So you may say, let's say you ended up last year. Let's talk about body composition, since that's something I'm working on right now personally myself. We talk about, hey, I think you remember last year when I was racing, I was about 180, 180 pounds. I'm 6'2", just about right for me. Always would love to be 176, but getting to 176 just takes a great deal of effort. So 180 is my target. I know I am not 180. So in my mind, I'm saying to myself, I think I'm like 184, right? Like, take a look at myself, like see how I feel, go for a run. I'm 184, right? And then you get on the scale, right? And just surprise, I was not 184, I was 187. And so, understanding that that better self-knowledge is a key part to self-improvement, I think is very important. That's another reason why doing things like, if you're talking about body composition, using an app to track your food intake is really helpful, right? Because we can talk about how we eat healthy, but if we have to write down nachos for the third day in a row, we're kind of having this internal psychological battle between the healthy version you think you are and this person who keeps typing nachos into their smartphone. Not the same person, right? It is the same person. And the difference is that we have that stress between the real version of you and that, not mythological, but like that athletic, that race day version of you. And it's okay not to be that athletic race day version of you. Athletic race day version of you can only be athletic race day version of you for a couple of weeks a year, maybe just 2, 3, depending who you are. But what you can do actually is go back and say, hey, how did last year's current version of me become the athletic version of me? And that was by taking concrete steps, right? And so one of those concrete steps is actually measuring where you are. So as much as people don't want to test, unless you can prove to me as an endurance station athlete, those of you not on the team, you're kind of get a hall pass here, right? Unless you can prove to me that you've got really accurate numbers based off of your data, based off of your training performances that we can work with, then I don't really want to hear so much about those epic goals that you have, because it's really hard to get to where you want to be if you don't know where you are. Closing down that gap, right? It might just be this far. Could be like this far. You could be like in that background there. You could be like way over the mountain or something like that. And understanding kind of where you fall in that space, I think is really, really important. So take the time, do the work, write down 1 or 2 core things that you need to know to define that will help you achieve the goals that you have. And for me right now, that is definitely body composition as an early season target goal for me, and kind of reconciling how I'm doing that. In fact, I've got here, I'll show you guys real fast. I don't know if it's going to show up on the screen there so well. I could probably share my screen. So there's a couple of things that I'm tracking right now. So you can see it on my phone. I've got it dialed in here. Woo, there we go. I get my steps every day. Working from home, not so many steps. I'm getting body composition over there right off of my scale, which is connected to my phone. Caffeine intake, got tracking the caffeine piece there and totally didn't add that last coffee in. I see that now. I've got intermittent fasting, doing a little fasting action here. 3 to 4 times a week, I'm doing a 14-hour fast. So that's tracked over here. It's got a little reminder app and tracks my progress. And then down here, I'm taking a look at my sleep, see how I'm doing, where I'm at. Each of these is just kind of a little widget. And so I've got it on my phone. And again, I find that since I'm using my phone way too many times a day, it's a great tool for me to stay in touch with the real me, right? Not just the one that I think I am. The one that I think I am doesn't have a coffee problem. The one who has to write down all the coffees in that app realizes, time for me to stay hydrated and perhaps find a different beverage to have in the middle of the day. Okay. Okay, let's see here. We got this question. Will testing show up in Final Surge in our training plan? So if you're doing one of our out-season training plans, then the tests happen in week 5, 10, and 14. If you're doing a different training plan, and that depends on the one that you've chosen, there may or may not be a test in there. So if you want to, in Final Surge, there is a testing week program. You can just go up to, view my plans or view training plans, and you can find the testing week, and you can actually just overlay it. You can say, hey, let's say next week, starting on whatever that is, the 1st, Dear God, 30, 31, the 1st. February 1st, you say, I want to insert the testing week on February 1st. It'll put those workouts in there. Give me a notification and I can jump in there with you and rearrange stuff to make it work. Generally speaking, we want a rest day before your test. If you're doing both sports, bike and run, for example, or 3 sports, swim, bike, and run, then we have to get a little creative. But if you're just doing a single sport, I usually tell people, do your weekend as you would this weekend. Take that Monday super easy off. And instead use that time to make sure you get your test all set up. The worst part about testing is not getting testing data. So make sure everything's charged, everything's plugged in, you have your route, you know what you're going to do. You've got it all mapped out, which buttons do which, so we don't press the wrong button, and then we're ready to go, right? And going to get into that test piece. Right now, I am using my Garmin to track my sleep, which is not ideal. I had I can't remember what it's called now. It was basically a strip that went underneath the mattress pad that would track my sleep and sleep patterns as well. But I'm definitely looking to upgrade that right now. So that's just getting total time in bed, like basically me not moving, laying down time, which is great for Garmin. So I'm getting a start and an end time, but I'm not getting is the quality of my sleep. I know many of our athletes on the team are using that Oura ring. Is something that they find useful, and they get a little bit more data. I'm on the fence about that, and I'm going to take a look and see where we're at in terms of what performance is. I know in general, from a macro perspective, I don't get enough sleep, but I'm definitely getting better at it. The hard part is that even though I work from home, and I'm not sure about you guys out there, I'd be curious to know if you have any sort of work from home challenges. I don't have a problem working out during the day. I work from home. I could block out an hour and say I'll go for a bike ride or for a run or whatever. The issue is that I just can't get it done on a regular schedule. I just have to get it done in the morning. If I'll get up in the morning and do the workouts or whatever. So normally, for example, I race at 6 a.m. on Zwift or ride at 6 a.m. on Zwift for like an hour and change. That's easy. That means I'm getting up at 5:15. But on days like today where I've got to do 2.5 hours, that means I'm up at 4. And so that means it's, functionally like a different day for me for the rest of the day, right? And so the sleep really matters. Not so much for today because of today's really session, but just all across the week. If I've been kind of cheating myself all week, then I fall into a rut later on. They say the definition of an entrepreneur is someone who's willing to work 24 hours a day to work for themselves versus working 8 hours a day to work for someone else. And I fully embody that notion. I love the struggle, love the work. So that's a place to go. So if anyone has any tips there about tracking sleep or anything else like that, I would really sort of appreciate hearing from you, whether it's here now tonight or somewhere else. Thanks for those questions. I really appreciate it. I don't know if anyone else has questions and comments, etc. I'm happy to hang out for a few more minutes. I'll take a sip of the coffee that I'm drinking, which I will now need to enter into my app. So on the days that I do fast, one of the ways, here's a great insight for me. So the fasting that I'm doing, 14-hour fast, I start at 8 p.m. the night before. I end at 10 a.m. the next morning. That includes my time in Zwift and steady state, no hard intensity, just steady state work, drinking my water, doing my stuff. That stops me from eating bad food at night, which normally I'm just sort of eating to keep myself awake, I'm pretty sure, because I seem to get a lot more tired earlier when I'm not snacking all night long. And then in the morning, I'm also, I have a cup of coffee with just, I've got some, what do you call it? Oh my God, medium chain triglyceride. I can't remember what it's called now. Oh, I'd have to go look it up. But I put some of that stuff in my coffee, no sugar, anything like that. So it's kind of like a bullet coffee, I guess, if you're familiar with that. And then I get on my bike with my water and I ride. And then I get my reward. So I've set up a reward for myself afterwards when I've got no sugar, everything kind of espresso drink here from Starbucks. So part of the process of getting myself, incentivizing myself to do the fast is that I get a reward at the end of the fast, right? So I haven't been going to Starbucks for forever, but my wife's like, why are we going to Starbucks all of a sudden? I'm going to Starbucks because that's my reward. I think incentives are everything for athletes. And so having an incentive for yourself is really important. Different levels of incentives working for different people. But without a doubt, I find that incentives are a great gateway step to the process, right? So I'm trying to build a habit where I'm doing a better job of managing my food later at night, which means just eating better earlier, right? So I'm not taking away stuff and depriving myself. I'm just saying, hey, eat your food, get it done by 8 o'clock. What's the incentive for me to do that later? Well, obviously down the road, I'll have better body composition. I'm hopeful. I've done a better job of my food habits. So how do I get myself to do that? Well, I give myself a reward. And I'll do something like this with my little Starbucks drink, right? Okay, that's a great question. Fueling on the Zwift rides. So as I mentioned, not all my rides are fasted. So I've got 2 different types. So one is that sort of fasted ride, which is water. And I have my cup of coffee next to me too, because hey, coffee. Again, go back to earlier in the broadcast where I talked about my coffee problem. So the next piece, on the days that I am properly, fueling and working, I have a power gel about 15 minutes before I ride. And then I've got 1 or 2 bottles of Gatorade Endurance that I'll also drink. I try and drink one of those every hour, although it's really hard indoors. So I try and take something about every 5 minutes is kind of my marker. The clock's going on the top of the screen there on Zwift. So every 5 minutes, I know I need to drink something and get the calories going in. I don't make it super strong because I just find it to be super sweet in general. But as I do get into race season, then I'll start changing the composition of the Gatorade a little bit. I'll go like, instead of just 1 scoop for a bottle, I'll go 1.5 scoops and eventually get to 2 scoops. So I'm getting those calories in that I need. What's more important for me right now is just having that pattern of proper fueling over the course of my ride. I don't want the workout to be a failure from an energy standpoint. Especially, I'm sort of in that middle bandwidth, at 187 pounds and 6'2", that when I do work, it's a lot of work. I need calories. And so I want to reward the work that I'm doing with actual energy and train my body to use that energy as well. So while I'm using the intermittent fasting as a tool right now, it's just a tool in many different pieces of my arsenal. And I still want to do work. Since I'm not willing to compromise on the work, I am fueling those Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday rides. But Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'm definitely going on the fasted side. So, and I use gels, and then I got my Gatorade Endurance. I've also got, sometimes I have Cliff Blocks, which I also love. However, as I was reminded earlier this week, as the temperature has dropped here in the Northeast and my setup is in my garage, that the colder my garage gets, the harder it is to eat those little gel thingies, those little blocks. They kind of turn into little rocks. So they're not in my back pocket staying warm. And so the gels definitely come in handy as I'm going through that process for sure. Something else that I've noticed as well, which is interesting for me in kind of having the duality of some fasted workouts and some regular workouts, is the warm up. Is that I found on my fasted days, I really need to kind of get on the bike and get loose. Whereas if I'm having some sugar, I feel like I'm warmed up. I'm not warmed up, right? But instead, what the difference is that what I really need to be doing is making sure that I'm warmed up. I was just talking about this, Wendy. What a great question. I didn't even realize you were doing that. So, to answer Wendy's question, I find that I have a miscalibration almost between my energy level in terms of what I feel like I'm at. So I feel like I'm warmed up, feel like I'm revved because I got the sugar in my system. Cardiovascularly, not the case at all. And I can see that because I'm genuinely really tuned in on the fasted ride side where I'm like, man, I need to get into it. I need to kind of get my energy level up, etc. So I need to build in that time accordingly, which is why I'm only doing the endurance rides as well. Over time, what I definitely notice is sort of the scale, right? So I feel like on some level, and this is totally anecdotal, I feel like sugars, carbs, glycogen essentially give us not false security, but they're reassuring, right? They make me feel good when I'm riding and stuff like this. So when the sugar's in space, I don't have as many mental challenges. So if you took an hour and said, hey, in the last 20 minutes of a tempo ride, how does Coach Patrick feel? In the last 20 minutes of a fuel tempo ride, I feel pretty good. I don't feel so bad at all. Things seem good. Yeah, I see 20 more minutes of work, I'm going to do it. On a fasted ride, in that case, those last 20 minutes, those are tough, right? That's where I'm sort of like, okay, I've got this. I start breaking things down. I start really looking at my heart rate, pay attention to it. Whereas normally when I'm having my food and stuff like that, I'm not really paying to all these ancillary numbers on my dashboard. I'm just like, let me stick on that wheel. And so I find that it's really definitely given me a different sort of mental acuity piece relative to how I'm utilizing my energy. Now, if you started finding that you were really declining in performance, right, that you were like, oh my God, I'm unable to do these workouts or I'm miserable, then it's worthwhile going back and taking a look at your regular diet, making sure that's good, or maybe even starting the process of moving to a fasted ride by cutting some of those calories down on those days, right? So I could easily have done, Monday, Wednesday, Friday with like minimal calories, right? Like 50% of the calories I would normally have, right? So instead of one gel every hour, I would have half a gel every hour, right? Instead of a bottle of Gatorade Endurance with the calories, I would just dilute that down. I'd have the same bottle of fluid, but I would dilute those calories down and kind of work my way down to that process. The key is that you really got to keep the intensity out of the equation if you're going to try and dive into some of the stuff and just kind of see where you're at. One caveat for you, Wendy, is that doing some of our research with the bike testing that we do, which was formerly known as Best Bike Camp, but soon will be known as Rocket Bike at getrocketbike.com. is that we did a lot of work with Stacy Sims, taking a look behind the scenes, and that women, generally speaking, do not respond well to fasted workouts at all. You can go a little bit low calorie if you want, but having fuel really makes a difference. How your body functions under training load is markedly different. And if I could generalize her amazing research into just a single sentence, which is a really dangerous activity, and please go see her Facebook page for all the resources, is that the women in a way kind of need the carbohydrates pre-workout almost to kind of prime using the right energy sources for fuel in their body. Okay, so something for you to think about. All right. Oh my goodness. Big question here from Mike. Monday and Friday are supposed to be rest days. Should I not overlay strength training, which is scheduled? And I don't like to do strength training without some kind of warm up. So there's running too. Not much of a rest day. I hear you, Mike. That's a great question. So it really depends kind of where you are in the out season. It's important early in the season to incorporate things like strength, because later in the year, depending on your goals, so you're going to be doing, 70.3 or maybe doing a 4 or 5 hour event, whatever that may be. As the training gets up and the training load goes up, your ability to do strength training dramatically decreases. So getting some of that work in now is important. So I tell people the out season is broken into 3 different phases. So that first phase, the first 5 weeks, strength lift away, right? Because you don't have any sort of residual fatigue. You can kind of just do it. We move into that second phase. This is where we start paying attention. You've got a number now from your test data, and we want to say, do you want to work to improve that number, or are you happy with that number? If you want that number to go up, then we have to create conditions for that number to go up. For most of us, Tuesday and Thursday are the hard bike days. So I would tell you on your Mondays, I would either lift super, super light, body weight exercises, or drop some of that weight down. So you're still getting the movements. You're still working on technique. You're not losing anything. You're just not pushing yourself to gain anything. And instead, we save Friday, for example, to be that day. So we still get that quality Tuesday and Thursday in without the real disruption of strength. I think a lot of times the struggle that athletes have who are really into the strength training is that they don't really appreciate the quality of the work that we're trying to do during the week. So Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, that's a big block of work. From an endurance perspective, that is our weightlifting interval type work. And when you add additional strength on either side of it, it does become challenging. Not that it's impossible, just that we have to modify, and the tension becomes, where do the best outcomes lie? Is the best outcome that I'm stronger on the bike, or is the best outcome, that I've got, better functional movement, sort of better, core strength? Perhaps you're rehabbing something, or you're staving off an issue, or whatever that is, and that will make a more successful version of you. I can say that no amount of deadlifting is going to make you a better cyclist. That riding your bike will make you a better cyclist. But I do appreciate that strength training does bring its own benefits. It's I really like that sort of direct, work in a sort of input outcome perspective. You do a ride and you're kind of like, man, I'm a little tired, and I'm hungry or whatever. But when you do a weightlifting workout, you can go like, hey, I lifted that 10 times. That's, I don't know, 4,000 pounds of stuff. I lifted 4,000 pounds. You definitely get a different direct sense of accomplishment as we go forward. It could tie in with some of your other goals as well. All right. Awesome. All right, guys, time for 1 or 2 more questions. If you got them, happy to do it. I'm going to sit back here and listen, or wait, see if someone else is typing an epically long question. As a reminder, I am here every Friday noon, and I post the topics. I've got to post topics for February, usually about 15 minutes of presentation with some time for Q&A afterwards. And I'll talk about different topics, whatever the sort of concept may be. One of the topics that I am really curious about right now are the athletes who sort of are in your sort of outer circle, the friends, teammates, people you have in your space who are athletes. Last year or the year before, they would have done races, done stuff, but this year they're really not. They're just not into it, right? We've had a bunch of people come and go to the team, and the predominant theme has been in the last 2 months that people just aren't that into it. They're just not. They're like, yeah, I'm not so sure. I'm not going to do it. It's not that they're not athletes anymore, but they've kind of lost that mojo. And I'm definitely curious what that is. I want to dive more into that. So if you've got anyone who's in that space, you can send them over to talk to me, on the page, or any EnduranceNation.us page has a chat box at the bottom. Or if you have some feedback or thoughts for me, go ahead to that chat box as well and put it there, and look for some posts coming up on that in February as well. Because I'm just really curious when I kind of wrestle with that mentality, right? So most athletes think about not being an athlete anymore. Like, if I'm a triathlete, but I'm not a triathlete anymore, it's an intentional choice. It's something that happens over time. There's goals that you have that you want to achieve, and then you can move on, right? There's a milestone and we can move on, right? I get my, I finish high school and I get my diploma and I can move on from high school. But the last 18 months is really sort of taken that away. 18 months, 12 feels like 18 months, has really taken that sense of control away from people. And I want to sort of unpack that a little bit more. All right, awesome. Okay, well, I don't see any more questions here from those of you in the gallery, so no worries. I want to thank you so much for tuning in. I hope wherever you are, it's warmer than where I am right now, because it certainly feels like I'm in the Arctic Circle here. 10 degrees outside, but like 15-mile-an-hour wind here down by the beach, so sub-zero. I just sure as heck hope my puppy doesn't want to go outside again for like the 17th time, because I'm frozen, so cold. I've even got my crazy hat head going on from my hat that I'm wearing inside. That's it. You'd think I was a super tiny, skinny person, and I'm not, but I am on the inside. That's what my scale tells me. All right, awesome. Hey, great to see everyone. Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Great to see you. Remember, tune in next week. And of course, we have all our other stuff going on the website as well. And if those of you who are checking this out are not on the team, just go to endurancenation.us. There's a chat button there. You can comment in there. I see all the comments. Happy to respond back to you, answer questions, get you on track. Oh, hey, one last thing. Just worked on the first draft. I know I've published some virtual event thoughts to the team for February, March, and April, May. February, March, May. I'm just working on the first draft here behind the scenes that will get published to the site next week and have an opportunity for people to sign up for the series of events, do some really cool stuff. All right, awesome. Great to see you guys. Really excited. Hope you have a fantastic weekend. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.